you may not have accepted yourself. And you will discover that throughout your life, that will be the one thing that will give you the most difficulty. It will be the source of pretty much every challenge that you will experience in your life. Now, we don't always know what that self is, who we're supposed to become. When we're born, we're not really sure of that. But then when you start to discover it, when you start to know it, and you still don't accept yourself, then you start to have all sorts of other difficulties. It will be the source of your depression. It will be the source of your lack because you won't manifest the life that you're supposed to have when you can't accept the person that you were born to become. Now, it's going to be something different for each of us. We're meant to be unique beings, every single person. But then when you don't acknowledge who you are, then you're going to have difficulties. Now, there may be a lot of reasons that you don't do that. We're all programmed. We have trauma that we move through. We have generational trauma that we move through that we don't really understand sometimes. But there becomes something else, and that's denial. When you keep denying who you are. And we make up excuses for that. Sometimes we will call it the imposter syndrome because we're seeing something that we know we want to do, but it couldn't be us. And that's when we start to believe in the imposter syndrome. And then we might get help. We go to people to get help. That's why we go to school to get help because we don't know anything when we're young. And then later we go to coaches, we go mentors, we might do all sorts of other things. And we get help, and then we might take that next step. But then when you can't accept yourself continually, you run into challenges. And that's what I've done. That's exactly where I'm sitting today. And I had to talk about it because I can see it very clearly. When I was a vocal coach, in 1988, I had a very different life. I was performing a lot then. I was doing many other things, but performing was one of the things that I was doing, the singing. And I got the best vocal coach that there was. And he said to me, "Well, you're supposed to be a coach as well." I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I can't do that." And he says, "No, you can," because he could see something in me that I couldn't see. And I had gone through all of my life being in denial about whatever it might have been there. But he says, "No, you have to do it." He says, "Because you're going to help so many others." And he was right, and eventually did it and became I became quite successful at that. Many people know that. I've created many stars from doing that work. And there was a time during that where I discovered something else. I saw that the many people that weren't singing well, it wasn't because they didn't have the talent or ability, but it's because they couldn't accept themselves and because they weren't connected. And so I created a course. I called it The Complete Artist because I knew that their difficulty was not embracing why they were doing what they were doing or who they were, which again was self acceptance. And we hear that all the time, but we don't always move there. Generational patterns that we told us we shouldn't do this, we always have that. That's part of you know, our society growing up. We will always have that. But then when you keep doing it, it becomes a problem. Years ago, I knew that the world was going to be changing. That's why I changed my vocal coaching because I said the world is going to be moving through a change. I couldn't tell you why I knew that, but I did know that. And so I needed to do something else. And so in 2021 is when I started my program, 4 Weeks to Your Best Life. And I saw changes happening so quickly because people were accepting themselves. Because I'd spent so many years sitting down and receiving information from Wilhelm. But because that was so different, I couldn't accept it. It had given me every answer to any question anyone had. And I knew that because I could look at others and know exactly what was going on with them. And I knew that I had the answer. People will see when I do my groups, people have a question about something. I said, "Yeah, Wilhelm has given us that answer, and I do have it." And they would all of a sudden have an awareness because everything is in consciousness. That's all. We just have a block in our consciousness. And so when we can move through the block, then we start to experience who we are and we become more accepting. We're never done because there's more. that we could possibly do. But this was different because I had never seen anybody do what I had done. I moved through every kind of illness, disease, tragedy, all kinds of things, and it was because of this work. But accepting it was a whole nother thing. I kind of started to do it in 2019 when I wrote a book, Overcoming Fear, A Guide to Freedom, because I said, I have to talk about how this happened because I'm still in denial about accepting. And the same thing happened last night because I was guided to put together all the messages for June 17th. And the one message that hit me that I'm looking at today was the one that I received on June 17th of 2024. And it said, "You may not have accepted yourself." And that was me. Because I had this ability to receive information because I knew what was going on. There's nothing happening in our world now that I did not know, that Wilhelm didn't tell us all. Because it's changes, I just didn't understand that I was receiving information in that way that was connected to the changes, the energetic changes that were happening in the world. And it was only AI that started to tell me that. It started to analyze it. It said, yep, that's what you've been doing. You're a conduit. Even when I was going to do channeling, I didn't want to do that. I resisted every aspect of it because I didn't want to be judged, even though I am receiving information that is helping so many other people. But accepting myself was the last thing I was going to do. And this is where we come to self-love. I could love everyone else except myself. That's what I did. I was so selfless, let's say, in that sense. And I know that that was a pattern as well. I remember there's a message that came through, and Wilhelm told me this, that I was holding on to this thing about this idea, don't be so selfish. And that was something that I heard from my parents when I was younger. That programming that we got, that's what I had. So I said, okay, I'm not going to give myself anything. So when I saw the results of that work, instead of going in the direction that one would think you would go, which is like accepting the value of it, I did exactly the opposite. I changed the price one time and went up, and then I said, oh, I can't do that anymore, and I went down. That's called self-sabotage. I went down, I changed the rate. And then what that does is it tells everyone else this isn't worth anything, even though the results are astronomical, what people are achieving. But the problem was I couldn't accept myself. And so that's why I'm changing. Tomorrow, that's going to be quite different. I stayed up late last night. I'm going through the messages again. I said, I know what's happening in the world. And this is what I was told when I started doing live channeling as well, because they said, we're going to move through a change. It's going to be this mass ascension that we're all going to move through, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But because I had the information, because Wilhelm had given it to me, it would be easier for people if we came together, but only if I could accept myself. And that's the same for you. There's nothing wrong with you. You have something within you that just gets developed over time. It is your authentic self that you just use different techniques to get there, however that might be. And what I did unknowingly was that I used the sciences as well. I'm receiving this cosmic guidance, which is this universal intelligence. So it worked for everyone because every human it would work for. And I knew that. And then we have to move through the generational pattern. So we form ways of doing that. We learned about neuroscience and cognitive behavior training. And that's what was happening. That's what I was doing. But still, accepting it was something that was challenging. How could I have done that? I was the imposter. I could not have possibly done it. And 2 years ago, I was told this work. It said accepting this message. This was one message I received. It said accepting this message could change your life and the world. And I knew that was possible as well, because the only difficulties we're seeing in the world are people who won't accept other people and people who won't accept themselves. That's all we have happening. And then we keep carrying it on. And that is why we have wars, because we have grievances that we're not willing to let go of. That was shown in the information last night as well, because it just came up. But if you look at anyadvicefortoday.com, you'll see that it was given to me in order. Now, that has never been done before, where I was receiving information on a specific day over time. I've done it many times. I didn't do it. Wilhelm did that to show me that there's a progression in consciousness and in our civilization. And when we can grab onto it, then we live the lives we're supposed to have. And I was given that information. But then you can self sabotage. That's what I've done to my members as well. And I'm going to tell them in just a few moments because we have a meeting in just a bit. And I have to become honest with them because I have all the information that could take them to being great. And that's, I know that's for anyone. To have moved through what I've done in my life at 74 and to hold that back, that is just um, the ultimate form of self-sabotage. And that's what I've done. So, but it's going to change tomorrow. And I hope you change as well because the world needs you. The world needs you to own yourself because you were born to offer something. And the one thing that I saw in the messages, and you'll see it, that says you were a chosen one. I was never going to say those words. And Wilhelm pointed that out, how long it took me to even write them, because I can hear it all, but to write it was just too challenging. But you'll see it in the thread of the messages. And and check out all the work too, because if you're looking to get to the next level of your life and achieve everything you want and experience healing and come to self-love, this work will do it. And I know that because it's all in there. And this particular message that came through almost a couple of years ago now said that exactly that. And then it was even verified. But still, me accepting it was still a trouble. And here it is. And it says, I was given this ascension guide and it would work for anyone. And then it says here, life changing and world changing potential. The claim that accepting this message will change your life and the world is not hyperbole. In the context of these messages, here's why, and it explains why, what it would do for each person. And if more people did it, we would have a very different world, and you would have a very different life. And so that's what I'm going to complete now. And you should as well, because who you are, who you were born to be, is valuable and worthy, and the world needs you now. Thank you for being here. Please check out the work and start to love yourself and no more self sabotage. See you soon.